He didn't say anything in response, but reached into his coat, pulled out a seal, and handed it to me. I recognized it immediately. It was another of 9 harbingers. You really gave this one to me before, Ezreal? I asked. I do. So you recycle? He didn't respond to that either, though I was surprised. You're giving me the seal of a 6th harbinger. That's correct. The fallen sycamore, the tree of Israel's judgment. And why am I giving it to you? A second time, he asked. Because it has something to do with the second shaking? It does, he said, but also for another reason. What? Within a sycamore are 2 mysteries, one going back to the last days of ancient Israel, and the other going back to the first days. The first day of ancient Israel, the first day of America. Chapter 16. The Uprooted. Look at the seal again, he said. What do you see? The sycamore, I answered. Look deeper, not at the main image. Look to the left of it. What do you see? Something that looks like some sort of wall. It is a wall. And he began walking, motioning to me to join him. We resumed the conversation, slowly making our way down the street, stopping several times along the way. The Lord sent a word, he said, through the prophet Ezekiel. So I will break down the wall you have plastered with untempered mortar, and bring it down to the ground, so that its foundation will be uncovered. It will fall, and you shall be consumed in the midst of it. Then you shall know that I am the Lord. Its foundation will be uncovered. What foundations do you think the prophecy is referring to, Nuriel? The foundation of a wall. It would seem. A foundation is that upon which something stands or rests or is built. So the nation's foundation is that upon which it stands or on which it was founded, or that in which it rests or places its trust. The nations of the ancient world trusted in their idols and gods. Modern nations trust in their powers, their militaries, their economies, their resources. But what it's saying here is that in the day of judgment, a nation's foundations are laid bare. Its idols fall and its powers fail. It's one of the key signs of judgment, the laying bare of foundations. The Lord said this through the prophet Jeremiah. Behold, what I have built, I will break down, and what I have planted, I will pluck up. That which is built up from the foundation, and that which is broken down is broken down to the foundation. So the Lord built Israel as one builds a house, and planted it as one plants a tree. But in the days of Israel's judgment, that which was built up would be broken down, and that which was planted would be uprooted, to images of national judgment, the breaking down and the uprooting. Repeat that, I said. Repeat what? He asked. Jeremiah's prophecy. Behold, what I have built I will break down. The bricks have fallen, I answered, and what I have planted I will pluck up. The sycamore have been cut down, I answered. Yes, Nuriel, it follows the same pattern. It's the same pattern and the same order as Isaiah 9:10. First comes the breaking down, the fallen bricks, then comes the uprooting, the sycamore, and that's what actually happened in 911. First came the collapse of the buildings, and then the unrooting of the sycamore. The two measures of national judgment, and in the same order. Yes, said the prophet. And it goes deeper still. The World Trade Center was the towering symbol of American financial power, a power centrist in the making and long connected to the island of Manhattan, the island that long functioned as the focal point of the nation's economic and financial activity. As far back as the dawn of the 17th century, the island served as a trading outpost for the Dutch. Those first traders and settlers soon felt the need to protect themselves from Indians, pirates, and other perceived dangers, so they built a wall. Along the wall, merchants opened up shops and set up warehouses. In time, The wall became the center point of the island trade and commerce. The Dutch would eventually lose the island to the British. The British would tear down the wall. Nevertheless, the road would continue to bear name of Wall Street. I said correct. The street we are walking on right now, it's Wall Street. Yes. And it was from this street and from this beginning that America's financial power would rise in this island, become the nation's financial capital. Wall Street would become a channel for the pouring in and out of money to finance America's ascendancy to economic, commercial, and industrial superpower. Here on this street, the nation's economic fortunes would rise and fall, and mostly rise. It would become the embodiment of American financial power. And in the 20th century, as America emerged as the world's towering economic colossus, the power and reach of Wall Street would encircle the globe to become, in effect, the financial capital of the world. Pretty impressive, I said, for a street that started out as a wall. Pretty impressive, he replied, for any street, but how did it happen? What was in it that transformed the road just a few blocks long and that for decades was not even paved with the cobblestones into America's financial capital and laid the foundation for America's ascent as the world's preeminent financial superpower? I think you're going to have to tell me. In March of 1792, a secret meeting took place at a Manhattan hotel. It involved 24 of the city's leading merchants. The purpose of the meeting was to bring order to the trading of stocks and bonds while protecting that trade from competition. 2 months later, on May 17, 1792, the merchants again gathered together, this time at 68 Wall Street, to sign a document. The document would seal the goals set forth at the first meeting. It would be the founding of what would ultimately be known as the New York Stock Exchange. The document was called the Bretton Woods Agreement. The organization born of agreement would be known as the Bretton Woods Association, and later as the New York Stock and Exchange Board, finally as the New York Stock Exchange. It would become the nation's leading stock exchange, and then in the 20th century, the world's. Thus, on May 17, 1792, with the signing of the Bretton Woods Agreement, the foundation was laid for the rise of America as the world's towering financial superpower. Do you know what Bretton Woods means, Nuria? No. It's the name of a tree, he said. What does a tree have to do with the founding of Wall Street? The 24 merchants used to meet and carry on their transactions under a Bretton Woods tree that grew on Wall Street. It was under that tree that they signed the agreement that gave birth to the New York Stock Exchange. So both the founding document and the founding association were named after the tree under which it all began, Wall Street, as we know it, and American financial power, also as we know it, officially began under a Bretton tree. May I ask a question? Of course, he said. What kind of tree is a Bretton Woods? You already know. What kind of tree? A sycamore. Bretton Woods, he said, is in essence just another way of saying sycamore. So the document from which Wall Street began was in essence the Sycamore Agreement. You could say that, and the New York Stock Exchange is in sense the Sycamore Association. You could say that too, he replied. And all the consequences of American financial power, all of its world-changing repercussions, it all began under the branches of the sycamore tree. Yes, he said, under the branch of the sycamore tree, and 911. The World Trade Center was a towering symbol of what that power had become, but the sycamore was the symbol of its origin, the foundation, I said, the foundation of a nation's power. which are exposed in the days of judgment. So I will break down the wall you have plastered with untempered mortar and bring it down to the ground so that its foundation will be uncovered. And in the foundation was a sycamore, and growing in the shadow of the World Trade Center was the sycamore of ground zero. Correct, he said. And on 9/11, the fall of the one would cause the fall of the other. The fall of a symbol that stands for Wall Street, yes, said the prophet. Just as 9/11 would strike a blow to Wall Street and the American economy, not only in those first days after the attack, but in the long-term economic damage it would inflict, culminating in the collapse of Wall Street 7 years later. So the sycamore wasn't only a warning of judgment, it was at the same time a specific foreshadow of economic collapse. The striking down of the sycamore tree is a biblical sign of judgment, he said, but the same tree is also a symbol specific to American power. So then the uprooting of sycamore would foreshadow. Yes, he said. It would foreshadow the unlooting of America's financial and economic power. He walked ahead of me, then stopped when he saw that I wasn't keeping up. Come, Nuriel, I wanna show you something. He led me to the end of Wall Street and into the courtyard of an old church where there rested a strange-looking structure of bronze. Do you know what this is? He asked. I have no idea. This was among the first prominent memorial to commemorate 9/11. It was unveiled on September 11, 2005. It's clearly intended to memorialize one of the details of the tragedy in which many found a measure of inspiration. But it meant more than he intended it to mean. I asked. Yes, he replied. And do you know what it is? It looks like some sort of loose system.